Good evening and welcome to another edition of Covenant Woman. My name is Elizabeth Johnny, and joining me on set today I have Judith Darby and Bernadette George. Ladies, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Judith and Bernadette are two of the facilitators of the GriefShare ministry at the Woodbrook Pentecostal Church. We felt it was necessary to deal with this topic of grief today in light of the devastating effects we have seen coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. The number of persons who have died worldwide is in the millions, and in our nation we have over 3,000 persons who've died from COVID-19. So it means that we have numerous family members, relatives, friends who are experiencing some type of grief, some form of grief. And so today we felt it was necessary to address this topic and find out how persons who are grieving can get help and how they can cope with their grief. So Judith and Bernadette are here to help us to discuss grief and the GriefShare ministry that is very much vibrant at their church. So ladies, again, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So, the first time I'm hearing about GriefShare ministry, and I just wanted to get a sense, how did you get involved in GriefShare? Or, what prompted you to get involved in the GriefShare ministry?
Okay. I became involved in GriefShare when my brother died about 7 years ago. I first heard about it from my sister when she went back to Boston, because she wasn't dealing with it properly. So she was asking, how are you all dealing with the grief? Do you all have help? And she was sharing when she went to this program how much it helped her to be able to understand what she was going through. And I remembered in a women's meeting, a pastor was sharing about grief, and Reverend Angela, she was like, this sounds really interesting. And she would like to have it in church, but time went along and we didn't start. And when my brother died, my cousin who lives abroad, she, in her church, they carried on this GriefShare ministry, so she invited me. And I went, because I was like, what could really help you? I mean, after so long when he died. And but sitting and listening and being a part of it, it really, really helped. I mean, I shed tears. I didn't expect to shed tears at that time, because I told myself, he died a while and, it will be. But it helped me so much. And I came back and I spoke to Rev and Pastor, and I said, it's ministry that we can get involved in. And they were very open.
Excellent.
So when my cousin came down, I was able to introduce them. So she came and she shared exactly what it is, and right on the button. They said yes, and we started moving from there.
Excellent.
And our first session was a good friend of mine died, and Rev was studying how the family will be able to enjoy their first holiday without their first Christmas without their mom. And so she invited the whole family, and from there we moved on.
Excellent.
Yes.
Judith, what about you? How did you become involved in GriefShare?
Well, Bernadette invited me actually, so I was part of what she was talking about in the US, but of course home through Zoom. And my mom had died about 20 years. I would have had several siblings died. And after 1, 2, 3 sessions, every time I shared, I was crying.
Wow.
And you felt, well, wow, clearly this thing was not dealt with.
Yes.
And you realize that you need now yourself to go through this. And it took me to that place where you realize that there would be others too who would be grieving and not even aware that they are grieving, not knowing how to grieve. And I just became part of the ministry. I was invited, and it just felt very natural for me to be a part of doing this to help someone else go through what I was going through.
Wow. Those are really interesting stories as to how you all became involved in such a critical ministry that is so relevant to all of us at some point, Now, before we go any further, we just want to give some definitions so that our audience can fully understand what we're talking about. So we started talking about GriefShare ministry, but before we go further, tell us, what exactly is grief? How would you define it? And how does it manifest? What is it?
Well, grief is a common and a normal psychological response following the death of a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's grief bereavement, the experience of losing a loved one through death.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most painful occurrences that can happen to a person. It has physical, psychological, and social ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even as we have been doing the GriefShare ministry, which we will talk about later, but when we talk about the physical, you ask yourself, what grief? But even in our ministry that we would have gone through, we have had persons who have had ulcerated stomach.
Wow.
Did not even realize it was because of the grief after years of having lost a loved one. So when she came to GriefShare ministry, she realized this is what would have caused what she had so many years ago. Another person actually had night seizures.
Wow.
And it was because of grief. When her loved one died, it was in the night, and she was awoken and told about the death.
Yes.
And she began to manifest in this way.
Yes.
So too, after coming to GriefShare and other things, she realized that it was because of the grief that was manifested there. We actually had a young man who wanted to put on tattoos. And while being in GriefShare, he realized it was as a result of grief.
Wow.
Because he's not a spring chicken, as we would say. And he never put on tattoos before. But he getting older now, he want and realizes because his mom had died and this was his outward manifestation.
Of that. So it can manifest in many different ways.
That's right.
And everybody's experience is different.
It is definitely different.
It's different.
Yes.
It's different. You mentioned grief and you mentioned bereavement.
Yes.
Is there a difference between grieving and mourning?
Yes, there's a difference. The grieving is more internal. So this is what you do, what you are feeling, what you're experiencing. And the mourning is what we do on the outward. You're preparing for a funeral, you'd be dressed in black.
Right.
And of course, it depends on the culture as well of the society that you are in, is how you would manifest this mourning.
Okay.
You know, so there are different ways that people will do it. But this is so very real, but it is different, but it is very much intertwined one with the other.
Right.
The grieving and the mourning.
So would you say, I'm asking for clarity, is mourning more short term and grieving more long? I'm just trying to understand clearly. Would you say it like that?
Yes and no. Because even our program is called Mourning to Joy.
Okay.
This is the program that we call. So it means that you're coming from a place where you would have been manifesting the grief that is you're going through, where you come to that place where you actually now you are celebrating your loved one.
Okay.
So you're no longer at that place where every time you think about Cheryl, you're crying, you're hurting, you're sad, and would probably want to not even mention the name till you get to that place now where you can actually remember the lovely memories that you would have had with Cheryl at that time.
Okay.
You know, so it's different, but
I hear you. Understand now. Now, you spoke about, you gave some examples of some of the past participants of the GriefShare ministry and the various ways in which they manifested their grief.
yes.
And somebody on the outside looking on we may have our own assumptions. So what are some of the assumptions? And I think we have all been guilty of it at some point or the other. What are some of the assumptions we make about grief and persons who are grieving?
Go ahead.
Yes.
One of it is there are so many myths. Okay, and one of the myths is that everyone grieves in stages. And the fact is, grief doesn't follow any rules.
Okay.
Because
I've heard that there are various stages of
yes, that's something we say. You know, but we have heard about denial, depression, anger. We heard about bargaining, and there's acceptance. But people follow these rules. But when it first started, it was a Dr. Kubler-Ross. He did interview with people who their loved ones was facing death. So they themselves was going through that process. But the researchers took it in a way and applied it to grief itself. You know. But if you look at, if somebody is grieving, will they look at, okay, am I at stage 1? Am I at stage 2? Or they're looking to see, if I'm not having anger, am I not grieving? So then you really cannot put grief in stages. Everyone grieves differently, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
I like that. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. And I'm thinking by extension, or let me ask, can anyone put a time frame on your grieving process?
No.
Should anyone do that?
No,
Should you feel pressured to you know, to kind of wrap it up quickly because people think you're grieving too long?
and that is all the assumptions we have, basically, because that's what we were taught, you know, to be able to get over that, you know, and to show this strong side, you know. And another myth it have is that women grieve more than men.
I've
and
also
the
heard
fact
that.
is, all people grieve differently, as we said.
Yes.
You know, a woman may show, because she's emotional, so she will show that type of grief. She's very demonstrative, right? And although men may want to cry to demonstrate how they feel, but we know in growing up, you know, young boys, you told them not to cry, you know, so they tend to hide that part of it. They may want to, right, but it just doesn't show it in that way. And they may show grief in another way, you know, something else that they can demonstrate it in a different way, you know. And sometimes the cultural norms, because of their culture, they will have other ways that they express this grief that they're feeling, you know. So that's 2. Another myth we have is that if you're not crying, you're not grieving.
Okay.
I'm a crybaby. You know, I know I would probably not agree with that, but it's true. And the fact is that crying is not essential to grieving, because when
this is new information for me. I've never heard that. I've never ever heard that. Okay, this is interesting.
Because we realize that there are many ways to express grief, and crying is not the only way, right? It have so many other ways to do it. And sometimes people cry because they're happy. They're not grieving, but they're happy, they're frustrated, they're exhausted, you know. And so there's a number of other emotions. I have some people who are grieving but still will not cry. It's just not part of their DNA. And so this is why we really cannot say that if you're not crying, that you're not grieving, that, you know, you're not really going through. So, and another thing that we have is that when someone here, like right now, my husband's sister died, and his nephew, that is his grandmother who died, and he told his mom that I cannot cry. I will not cry. He's only 10.
He said he will not cry.
He said, I will not cry.
Wow.
So you realize that numbness could take place when you, depending on how the death comes and how you hear it, sometimes you get into that place that, and numbness is also a part of emotion. You know, so, and then the persons who are numb now, their friends or family may not understand. You know, might figure that, oh, it is acting so normal, or just like it doesn't care, or sensitive. Yes.
But
so that is another aspect of grieving. Okay, and then we want to look at the first year is the hardest.
The first year of okay.
But then the fact is, grief is hard, period.
Okay.
So whether you lose someone,
so that's another myth.
That's another myth.
Right.
Yes,
because you spoke about losing your mom and siblings about 20 years ago, and yet when you became a part of the ministry, when you were actually a participant, you were still, you know, you realized you hadn't dealt with, okay.
And to share a story, one of our participants as well recently, I spoke with him when his aunt told him to call us and to get involved in the ministry. His mom had died, her sister. And he called me in obedience. And he said, I good, you know, I'm not grieving, I good, you know, I dealt with this and my mom, and, you know, I am good.
Wow.
He still decided because of his aunt that he would register.
Wow.
And after watching the first video, he called me. He said, you know, I realize I'm grieving.
Wow, he had not realized.
That's right. So a lot of times people not even aware, because this is not something that we in our culture have ever dealt with. It's not something that we know. It's not something that we understand.
Mhm.
As Bernadette said earlier, they tell you, hurry up and get over it.
Yes.
You
yes.
know, that is how we felt. That
Mhm.
is to help you.
Yes.
We tell you, hurry up, don't stay in that place.
Don't stay there. Pick yourself up.
Yeah.
Life goes on. You
Exactly.
need to move on.
Exactly.
Yes.
Not realizing that it needs time to go
Yes.
through,
Process,
even in your own
yes.
mind, what
Mhm.
has happened now that
Mhm.
you have lost that person.
Wow. You know, that story you shared just now reminds me of a student I would have interacted with just a few weeks ago. And he just mentioned very casually, you know, his father died during the whole COVID pandemic when we were on lockdown. His father died, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I mean, to lose your father as a teenager, that's really tough as a young man. And the same thing, he said, I good. I said, what? He said, yeah, I good. I said, but no, you can't be good.
Yes.
Your dad has
Just
died, you
having
can't.
lost
No, I
your dad.
good. I said, no, you can't be good. And I had to leave the student at the point in time to deal with something else. But that conversation kept playing on my mind. And a few days later, I went looking for him. And I didn't know his name, but I found out and I called him. I said, I want to talk with you. I said, you shared something that was so, for me, I felt so sad for you and you were so calm, you know. He said, yeah, I good, miss, I good. I said, but no, you can't be good.
Yes.
And he kept insisting. And then I remember asking him one question. I said, what is one memory you have about your dad that really, really, you know, touches your heart? And he began to share, and his whole face lit up as he was talking about his dad. But as his story came to a close, the tears came, and he just began to cry. And I said, you see, you're not okay. You need help. Would it be okay if I referred you to? And he said, yes, miss. You know, so that just reminded me of that. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. And you're right. As a society, we don't always teach people about grief. We don't. It makes us uncomfortable. I think that's
a
what
topic
it
we
is.
don't like to speak about.
We don't speak about it.
Yes.
Makes us uncomfortable.
Yes.
It makes us uncomfortable for
Yes.
persons to be vulnerable and to share their hearts and to be crying and it's
right.
like, okay, you need to stop now so I can be comfortable, you know.
You know, as you said that, it brought me back to another story when the participant shared, you know, when her sister died, and she was saying that in the household, among her brothers and sisters, they don't never is a mention, because they know how to deal with it.
Wow, they
You
never
know,
spoke
how
about
many
it.
years have gone by? Yes. So when she
Wow.
came to
Plenty.
grief, plenty years.
Wow.
That is when she came to grief and she realized, and she said, no, we have to start to speak about this. We have to, you know. And I said, you know, when I look back, it's like, so how do you celebrate her life? Because even though she's gone, she was still part of you.
Yes.
You know, and the memories is what we live on.
Yeah.
So you find people really do go through that, but because we didn't know much about this grieving and all those things, that we just take it as okay,
Wow.
normal.
It's
It's
normal.
a normal part
It's
of
not
life.
normal, as we would say.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want to get to the crux of the matter, the heart of the matter. So you are two of the facilitators of the GriefShare ministry. So we've spoken about grief, we've spoken about the myths that are usually associated with grieving. We've talked about the difference between grieving and mourning, and you've even mentioned bereavement. But I want to talk specifically now about the GriefShare ministry. So what is GriefShare and how does it work?
Okay. GriefShare is a network of thousands of grief recovery support groups worldwide.
So it's not a localized...
No, it's not.
It's right.
And it's GRIEF, capital GRIEF and capital S.
Okay.
HARE, and
All
it's
right.
one word.
One word. Okay.
GriefShare. So its purpose actually is to equip churches with a complete set of resources that help them offer ongoing weekly GriefShare support groups. This life-changing material will minister to grieving people in our churches and throughout our communities.
Okay.
right? Most churches, they do a wonderful job of caring for people after they die.
Yes.
In the
yes.
immediate.
In the immediate, yes.
So they send you basket of fruit.
They're
send
present
you
every night
flowers.
for
We have
a service. Yes, yes.
And a few days after the funeral,
you're on your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of the people surrounding the griever, they return to their normal life.
Yeah.
And the griever is still sitting there asking, but how can people move about like normal and I'm still in the state I'm at? Right? They don't understand the deep, prolonged suffering and hurt that people would have gone through after having lost a loved one. So the griever needs ongoing support and encouragement, lasting months or perhaps even longer. It's a level of care that even the most conscientious pastor may be willing but unable to provide.
Yes.
Let's be
in
honest.
reality, yes, that's true.
So that's the reason for GriefShare. It provides our churches with the tools and the structure to offer weekly lay-led support.
Lay-led, I like that.
That's right. So we, the lay people, we're not the pastor of the church. We are there to offer that support. So these groups are designed to meet year-round, providing the sustained support a grieving person needs. So because GriefShare groups are led by caring lay people from the church congregation, this can be offered without adding major workload to the church staff or to the pastors, right?
So the body, in essence, the body is caring for itself.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And I have that written somewhere where we talk about body ministry. So we minister to those of our congregation in reach. And then there's outreach because it's offered to the community.
Right.
You have a funeral service at church, and you offer this to let people know that we have ministry here for you and your family. Anytime that you're going through that, you can come.
And I'm thinking that is an excellent evangelistic tool as well.
That's right. That is exactly what it is.
Yes.
And what we are to is an emergency room.
Yes.
Meaning that we are open constantly right through during the year so that anytime you can join the GriefShare ministry.
Okay, good.
It is not like at the beginning of a cycle or the thing. We started this second cycle for the year on the 1st of May. And even as people hear about this, they can join us anytime because what it means, we encourage you to do more than one 13-week cycle.
Okay.
Because you find when you go through the second one, you're at a different stage, a different place in the grieving.
I hear you.
So that you find you'll be able to receive even more than you did then.
Good.
So we encourage you to come back.
Hi, good day. My name is Ansel. And a few years ago, in 2019, I lost the love of my life, my angel. It was a pretty trying time. It wasn't easy at the time. It was times of getting up and feeling as though there is no hope. There's no reason to get up. There's no reason to go forward. There's no reason to do anything. And I'm sure a lot of you might be able to attest to that, or might be able to agree with that kind of stuff. When you lose a loved one, it's very difficult. The first time I tried GriefShare, I wasn't able to complete it. It was really difficult. But the second time around, I tried it, and I went through the full duration, and it was really helpful for me. It was like a godsend. It was what was needed at the time. It showed me so much. The Word of God showed me that so many other people would have gone through situations like mine, that I'm not the only one. God showed His mercy and His love in His Word and towards me, and it really helped me to move forward, helped me to come to a place of acceptance and to not be stuck in living the same thing over and over or waking up every morning and not having a purpose or a sense of direction. So GriefShare has really been a help to me. My personal experience was that it was very difficult, and through the help of friends, GriefShare, the word, I was able to pull through. I was able to, and when I say pull through, I mean not that I'm 100%, but I'm at a point where I can move forward. I'm at a point where I can look forward to getting up in the morning, look forward to going to a job, look forward to being with friends and family. You know, God has been good. GriefShare has been a great help. It has been a blessing to me, and I trust that it will be a blessing to you too. God bless you. Have a great day.
A pastor is listening, or a lay person is listening, or an elder is listening, and they say, okay, this is something that we would want to do, we would want to become a part of, we want to have this at our church. How can they contact you, and where can they get information to start the training?
Okay, they can contact us. Our email address is wpcgriefshare@gmail.com. That's wpcgriefshare@gmail.com. If they go online, they will find the number 740-9975, and they can call that number, and they will immediately get on to someone who will be able to direct them and to tell them how they can move forward. It's also available on Woodbrook's website as well. That's woodbrookpc.org. So persons can go there so that they can seek more information on how to actually be a part of this ministry.
Excellent.
Because the thing is, it's so much needed in the communities. It's
Yes,
not
it
just
is.
for us. We have to reach out to others. And as we said earlier, it is an evangelistic tool.
Yes.
So you go there, your folks, they don't know the Lord, and you are ministering to that felt need that they have at this time. They will see you as somebody they can trust.
So again, thank you, Judith. Thank you, Bernadette, for joining us on Covenant Woman, and thank you for sharing about GriefShare and how we can become a part of the training, and even recommending, referring persons to the program. Yeah? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's program. Please join us again as we continue with our discussions on the GriefShare ministry at the Woodbrook Pentecostal Church.